beasts of the field which the Lord Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, Yea, hath Yahweh said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Again, now we see, we get a glimpse of this in Matthew 10, where he says, Behold, I set you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Shalom. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing hints of this serpent seed that's spoken about by the Messiah, by John the Baptist. All of these things are being said in the order in which they're being spoken about for good reason. Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves aprons. Or in other words, they girded up their loins. Then we see in verse 14, we see Yahweh shows up, and we see the spirit of Yahweh showing up, Elohim. So quite possibly the Messiah saying to the serpent, Because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. And upon thy belly thou shalt go, and dust thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. Now, many people will go as far as to say that angels aren't real, but they believe in a talking snake, right? They believe that a talking snake was in the garden. And I'm not saying that animals didn't talk, because they did. We know that what book is it with Balaam, where Balaam's kicking the donkey, right? We see that animals talk in that, and we also know that animals speak based on the book of Jasher. Jasher tells us that once Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, and that was an act of mercy. They were kicked out of the garden, and a cherub or a angel with a flaming sword was placed to guard the way of the tree of life, the Torah. Okay, so putting in perspective here, again, I'm going to bounce back and forth to kind of show these bloodlines and what's going on between the two. We see in verse 15, he says, And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise its heel. But remember, when we're told that dust is being spoken about in a lot of different places here. One, Adam was created and formed from the dust, right? And then we see that the serpent is told that he shall go and he shall eat dust all the days of his life. And then if you take note in the book of Ezekiel, the valley of dry bones is referred to as dust, right? So there's a lot of things to connect here. Psalms 139, Surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O Elohim. Depart from me, therefore, you bloody men. For they speak against thee wickedly, and thine enemies take thy name in vain. Do not I hate them, O Yahweh, that I hate thee? And am I not grieved with those who raise up against thee? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. This is King David, but this is also the Messiah speaking, right? So this is the Messiah saying that he hates them with a perfect hatred, and he counts them his enemies. And then we see Genesis 3:16. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, and in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thou shalt desire, and thy desire shall be for thy husband, and thou shalt rule over, and he shall rule over thee. So here, the crime is fitting the punishment, as I've said before. We see something took place. They ate off of a tree that was desired to be to make one wise, right? And that word that was there that we've gone through before means to lie with. And then she says later on that the serpent beguiled her, meaning to be seduced. meaning that the serpent seduced her. So we see that Satan is able to transform himself into an angel of light, right? So we'll jump to Genesis 6, and it says, "And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, when the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took unto them wives, all which they chose." And then in Jude 1:6, it's referring to these fallen angels. "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of that great day." So jumping from Genesis 6:1, we're seeing the same story playing out in Enoch 7:1-2. "And all the others together took unto themselves also wives, which they chose, each one for themselves, and began to go unto and defile themselves. And with them they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose heights were 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men, when they could no longer sustain them, when giants turned against them and devoured mankind, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and devour other flesh, and drink the blood. And then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones." So we know for a fact that Cain's blood also makes, the earth also makes accusation and cries out. Cain's blood is crying out. His spirit cries out from the ground, right? So we see the same exact thing taking place with Cain. Now, Hebrews 11:5, "By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because Yahweh had translated him. For this translation he had the testimony that he pleased Yahweh." And then if we see Genesis 5:21-22, it says, "And Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God and begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters." So again, I've walked us through Enoch a couple times before, just in various places. I don't want to get too far ahead of the teaching that we're going to be doing on that. But Enoch talks about what was taking place. So we're seeing Methuselah here, and then in Enoch chapter 106 it says, "And after some days my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore him a son. And his body was white as snow and red as the blooming of a rose, and the hair of his head, he had long locks which were white as wool, and his eyes were beautiful. And when he opened his eyes lighted up the whole house like the sun. And the whole house was very bright. And thereupon he arose in the hands of a midwife, and opened his mouth to converse with the Lord of righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid of him, and fled, and came to his father Methuselah, and said unto him, I have begotten a strange son, diverse from an unlike man, and resembling the sons of God of heaven. So right here we're seeing Lamech is saying that this child represents the sons of God which are in heaven. And his nature is different, and he is not like us, and his eyes are like the rays of the sun, and his countenance is glorious. And it seems to me that he might have sprung from me, not from me, but from the angels. And I fear that in his days a wonder might be wrought on the earth. And now, my father, I am here to petition thee, to implore thee, that thou mayest go to Enoch our father, and learn from him the truth. For his dwelling place is amongst the angels. And when Methuselah heard the words of his son, he came to me in the ends of the earth, from when he had heard, where I had cried aloud for his voice, and I came to him, and I said unto him, Behold, here I am, my son. Wherefore hast thou come to me? And he answered and said, Because of a great cause and anxiety I have come to thee, and because of a disturbing vision I have approached. And now, my father, hear me unto Lamech my son. there hath been born a son that is like of whom there is none in nature. And nature is not like man's nature, and the color of his body is whiter than snow, and redder than the bloom of a rose, and the hair on his head is whiter than any wool, and his eyes were like the rays of the sun when he opened his eyes. And thereupon he lightened the whole house. And when he arose in the hands of the midwife, and opened his mouth, and blessed the Lord of heaven and his father Lamech, because he was afraid and fled to me, and did not believe that he had sprung from him, but that he was in the likeness of the angels of heaven. And behold, I have come to thee, that thou mayest make known to me the truth. And I, Enoch, answered and said unto him, The Lord will do a new thing on the earth. This I have already seen in a vision, and will make known to thee that in the generation of my father Jared, some of the angels of heaven have transgressed the word of Yahweh, and behold, they committed sins and transgressed the law, and have united themselves with women, and commit sin with them. And they have married some of them, and have begotten children by them. And they shall produce on the earth giants, not according to the Spirit, but according to the flesh. And there shall be a great punishment on the earth, and the earth shall be cleansed from all impurity. Yea, there shall also come a great destruction over the whole earth, and there shall be a deluge and a great destruction for 1 year. And this son who has been born unto you shall be left on the earth, and his 3 children shall be saved with him, when all mankind that are on the earth shall die, and his son shall be saved. And now make it known thy son Lamech, that who has been born in this truth his son, and call his name Noah. For he shall be left to you, and he shall call his son shall be saved from the destruction which shall come upon the earth on the account of the sin and all of the unrighteousness which shall be consummated on the earth in his days. After that there shall still be more unrighteousness than that which was first consummated on the earth. For I know the mysteries of the holy ones. For he, the Lord, has showed me more and informed me, and I have read of them in the heavenly tablets. And then we see in Enoch 107, he says, And I saw on them the generation upon generation shall transgress, till a generation of righteous arise. And transgression is destroyed, and sin passes away from the earth, and all manner of good comes upon it. And now, my son, go and make known to thy son Lamech, the son which he has been born in truth, his son that is no lie. And when Methuselah heard the words of his father Enoch, for he had shown him everything in secret, and returned and showed them to him, and called the name of his son Noah, for he will comfort the earth after all the destruction. So that's the name of Noah right there. That's Noah's name. Genesis 5:29, and he called his name Noah, saying, The same shall comfort us concerning our work in the toil of our hands, because of the ground which Yahweh hath cursed. Genesis 3:17-19, And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I have commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat the bread till thou return to the ground, for out of it that was taken, for dust thou art, and dust thou shalt return. So this is very interesting, because this is brought up multiple times. And also, I want you guys to understand, in the Apocrypha, it's also brought up this way of speaking. It's also said, I'll have to find it in the other, whatever book it's in, I'll have to do a search for it, but it's also talking, it also says the same exact thing. Somebody else gets cursed later on in Scripture, and they're the same exact thing that's said to Satan about slithering on his belly, or dust, maybe not slithering on his belly, but dust he shall eat all the days of his life. That was a way of talking about what we're talking about right now. So we see that in Genesis 6, we read that men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and took to them wives, all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So from this point forward, there's 120 years left before Yahweh is going to bring this great deluge, which we just read about. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, the same became mighty men, which were men of old and men of renown. That men of old is men of olam. These are eternal beings. These are not human beings. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination and the thought of his heart was only evil continually. So the angels are already here. They've already corrupted the earth, but now they're mixing also with other kinds, right? So these other kinds are now producing evil beings on the earth. And the men that are still left, Enoch is working with those men and trying to bring them into righteousness. And he's the one that's on the earth that's preaching righteousness to them before he's taken by Yahweh. And it repented Yahweh that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And he said, I will destroy man who I have created on the face of the earth, both man, beast, and creeping thing, and the fowls of the air. It has repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. And then it says in Genesis 6:11 through 13, the earth was corrupt before Yahweh, and the earth was filled with violence. And Yahweh looked up upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And Yahweh said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is before me, and the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Genesis 7:1. And the Lord said to Noah, Come, thou and thy house into the ark, for I have seen you righteous before me in this generation. So he's saying that he has found Noah to be righteous in all of the generation, in that generation, out of all the men that are in this generation. Noah was the one that was found as righteous. This is why only 8 people were on the ark, because of Noah. It's the same way that with the blessings of Abraham had a special blessing over him, which covers all the nations. All these different nations, they have a blessing over them up until a certain point, right? It's the same thing that's taking place. All of mankind is found being saved here because Noah is a righteous man, and he's found righteous in his generation, genealogy. The book of Genesis is the genealogy of all of these people. Genesis 9:19 through 29. These are the sons of Noah, and them who were on the earth and overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was a drunkard, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon their shoulders, and went backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God enlarged Japheth, and he shall dwell in tents, the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 50 years, and all of Noah's days were 950 years, and he died. So Noah lives just 50 years shy of 1 full day with the Most High. That's amazing. If you think about that in the timeline that we currently live in, Noah, Adam, Methuselah, all of those people, they nearly lived 1 full day with Yahweh. Remember in 2 Peter it says, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day with Yahweh is 1,000 years to us. 1,000 years to us is one day to him. Genesis 10:5 through 10. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, and their families and the nations. The sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabbatha, Ramah, Sabaka, and the son of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod, and he began, and listen to this, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. So if you guys read into other parts of Scripture and you start finding out that Nimrod, and this is the key to understanding what's going on here, Nimrod began to be a mighty man in the earth. And he was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahweh. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Chaldean in the land of Shinar. Now, Shinar is where the Tower of Babel was built. Shinar, if you look at the land, was so massive in size. This is why Nimrod chose to set up camp here. Nimrod chose this land in Shinar, this large portion of land, that was a 3.5 day journey to walk across from one side to the other. That's how big the base of the bottom of the Tower of Babel was. Now, Nimrod's idea was to infiltrate the firmament and to destroy and overthrow the Most High. This is why the Tower of Babel was erected. Jasher 6. And still the sons of men would not return from their evil ways, and they increased the anger of Yahweh at that time, and did not even direct their hearts to all of this. And at the end of the 7 days, the 600th year of the life of Noah, the waters of the flood were upon the earth, and the fountains of the deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened up, and rain was upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. And Noah and his household and all the living creatures that were with him came into the ark on the account of the waters of the flood, and the Lord shut him in. And all the sons of men were left upon the earth, became exhausted through their evil on the account of the rain, for the waters were coming more violently upon the earth, and the animals and beasts were still surrounding the ark. The sons of men assembled together, about 700,000 men and women. 700,000 men and women assembled and came unto Noah to the ark. And they called unto Noah, saying, open for us that we may come unto the ark, and wherefore shall we die? And Noah said with a loud voice, answering them from the ark, saying, have you not all rebelled against Yahweh? And said, does this not exist? And therefore Yahweh brought upon you this evil, and to destroy you, to cut you off from the face of the earth. Is it not a thing that I spoke to you 120 years back, when you would not hearken to the voice of Yahweh, and now you desire to live upon the earth? And they said to Noah, we are ready to return to Yahweh, only open for us that we may live and not die. And Noah answered them and said, behold, now that you see the trouble of your souls, and you wish to return to Yahweh, why did you not return during the 120 years, when Yahweh granted you as a determined period of time? So we've been given another determined period of time, have we not? Our Messiah spoke about this in the book of Luke. But now you come to me and you tell me on this account the troubles of your souls. Now also Yahweh will not listen to you either, neither will he give ear to you on this day, so that you shall not succeed in your wishes. The sons of men approached in order to break into the ark on the account of the rain, for they could not bear the rain upon them. And the Lord sent all the beasts and the animals that stood around the ark, and the beast overpowered them and drove them from that place, and every man went his way, and they again scattered themselves upon the face of the earth. So now we're seeing the animals, the beasts, all of these different creatures trying to break up the ark, to get onto the ark. And Noah saying, it's too late. Floodwaters were becoming increasingly great, more than what they could withstand. All of the water starts flooding the ark, and Noah tells them pretty much, listen, you had your chance. You were given 120 years to get it together, and you guys mocked and scoffed, and you thought it was funny. This is why we see in the New Testament, Yahweh says, as in the days of Noah, so also shall the return of the Son of Man be. The manipulation of DNA, the wickedness and evil of men's hearts, the fact that they didn't believe in the truth, what Yahweh was telling them through the prophets. The same thing's taking place right now. Only this time, the wicked shall be removed from the earth by fire. So, in order for us to understand what the days of Noah were like, we have to have some sort of insight on what was taking place in that time. Genesis 6:4, again, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same became mighty men of old, mighty men of renown. Olam, eternal beings. Genesis 7:15. And when Noah went into the ark, into all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. Genesis 7:13. In the selfsame day Noah entered, and Shem and Ham and Japheth and the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and Noah's 3 wives and his sons with them into the ark. So this right here, Genesis 7:13, is your understanding, or your key to understanding why and how there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. One of the wives of Noah more than likely was carrying a chromosome from one of these giants that were on the earth at the time. Genesis 6:11 through 13. The earth was also corrupt before Yahweh, and the earth was filled with violence. And Yahweh looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. How does all flesh corrupt its way? It's not, this isn't just evil men. These are, remember what took place in the garden. It was something immorally that took place, sexual act of immorality that takes place because Yahweh punishes Eve and tells her she's going to bring forth children in sorrow, and in her conception shall she bear children, not a child, twins. 2 children she was going to have. So this is part of the downfall of what takes place in the garden, but also outside of the garden, we have the other angels that made this pact on top of Mount Hermon, who go down and defile themselves with the daughters of men also. So there's multiple things taking place in the days of Jared. That's when the watchers come down. Jubilees 5:1 through 11. And it came to pass when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, and the angels of God saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, and they were beautiful to look upon, and they took themselves wives, of whom they chose, and they bare unto them sons that were giants. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh was corrupted in its way, alike men and cattle and beasts and birds and everything that walks on the earth. And all of them corrupted their ways in their orders, and they began to devour each other. And the lawlessness increased on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of men was evil continually. Folks, these books are older than the books that, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, the book that proves all of this stuff that's in Genesis outdates Genesis. So how is it that this information was in these books that scholars all know for a fact outdate the book of Genesis, yet people deny what's in these books, and they all have the same account? They're all giving the same account. They're not adding anything. They're not taking away anything. They're simply telling you the same story. But when you remove stuff, I can show you 2 places I've showed you guys before, but when you look in Scripture, it says, was this not mentioned in the book of Jasher when the sun stood still? These things are all references to these books, and there's a reason why. They went by Jubilees, and they went by the calendar, which was in Enoch. That's how we knew our days and months and years and all of the things that take place. That's how we knew that the earth was flat. This isn't just some conspiracy that people came up with. This came from what was originally written in almost every encyclopedia, every book known to man. The U.S. military knows this for a fact. People that have been flying planes nearly their whole lives know that they don't take into account for any type of pointing the nose of a plane down for curvature of the earth, which is 8 inches per square mile. So if you're flying from one side of the country to the other, and you're flying at 30,000 feet, a straight line, how are you not leaving the atmosphere? That makes absolutely no sense to me. What does make sense to me is Genesis chapter 1, where Yahweh says he places the sun, moon, and the stars inside the firmament, and that they would be for seasons and signs and days. This is how we know what's going on. All right. And again, the angels whom he had set upon the earth, he was exceedingly wroth, and he gave the commandment to root them out of the dominion, and he bade us to bind them in the depths of the earth. Where does it say they were bound? In Dudael. They were cast into Dudael, the land of the boiling kettle, which just happens to be from the same land that the Og of Bashan is from. That's where the Og of Bashan lived. And there's huge holes that are cast into the ground that Enoch tells us that these angels were bound up and buried in those holes. So I don't understand what the confusion is about this, especially when you start getting into bloodlines and you start understanding who all of these people are, or who all these beings are. Then it says, and against the sons he went forth and commanded from before his face that they should be smitten with the sword and be removed under the heaven. We know from the book of Enoch that an angel was sent with a sword, that the offspring, the giants that came from the watchers, would turn on one another. This is why it says they devoured one another in the book of Jasher. Now in Jubilee it says that they turned on one another. And he said, my spirit shall not always abide on man, they also are flesh, and their days shall be 120 years. And he said, and he sent his sword into their midst, and each should slay their neighbor, and they began to slay and kill one another, and they fell by the sword and were destroyed from the earth. So the giants were destroyed by turning on one another, right? The sons of men were destroyed by a deluge, except for 8 people out of 750,000 some odd people that were near the ark at that time. And their fathers were witnesses of their destruction. And after this they were bound in the depths of the earth until the day of the great condemnation, which judgment is executed on all those who have corrupted their works before Yahweh. And he destroyed all of their places, and there was not one of them left whom he had not judged according to all of their wickedness. Now, we see that all of the sin was ascribed to Azazel, who is one of the angels who was on Mount Hermon that made this pact. This is found in Leviticus chapter 16, verses 7 and 8. If you look up that word scapegoat, they took a red ribbon, they would wrap it around the horn of the goat, and they would ascribe all their sin to that goat, and they would send the goat out into the wilderness. The same thing that happened to Azazel, the same exact thing. He's cast into Dudael, all the sin is ascribed to him. And then what they would do is they would cut the piece of the ribbon off, they would place it above their door, and if that ribbon changed, then they would know that Yahweh had accepted their offering, or accepted the fact that they had placed their sin offering onto that scapegoat. That scapegoat's name is Azazel. There's a reason why that's there. There's a reason why the children of Israel are atoning for their sin in Leviticus chapter 16. Enoch chapter 6, and it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied in those days, and there were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come and let us choose wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Semjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of this great sin. And they all said to him, let us all swear an oath and bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. They swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecation upon it. And they were all in 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Samjaza, their leader, Arakabel, Ramiel, Kokabeel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Daniel, Ezekiel, Barakajel, Aziel, Aramos, Batharel, Aniel, Ezekiel, Sampizel, Satirel, Turiel, Jamjael, Sariel. These are their chiefs of tens. So they have chiefs of tens, just like the armies of Yahweh have chiefs. They have leaders over them, which are the 7 angels that the Messiah holds in his hand. And under those 7 angels are ranks of other angels. These are the armies in Revelation that are going to return with the Messiah when he returns. It says that all of the armies, the angels of heaven, are following on white horses behind the Messiah. So again, the confusion about why there's not angels in Scripture and all that, I don't know where it's coming from. Enoch chapter 7 verse 1. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives. Did I read this? Took unto themselves wives which they chose for themselves, and they began to go unto them and defile themselves, and they taught themselves charms and enchantments and the cuttings of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose heights was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And the men could no longer sustain them, and the giants turned against them, and they devoured mankind, and they began to sin against the birds, the beasts, and reptiles, and fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and to drink the blood. And the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. So the earth lays accusation anytime blood is spilled. When a spirit or blood is spilled from someone's body and it goes into the earth lays accusation against the person who does that, and it makes suit, and Yahweh knows what takes place. We see this in Genesis chapter 4. Enoch chapter 8. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and those that use antimony, and the beautifying of eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and coloring tinctures. And there arose so much godlessness that they committed fornication, that they were led astray and became corrupt in their ways. And Semjaza taught enchantments and the cutting of roots. Amaros, the resolving of the enchantments. Barakajel taught the astrology. Kokabeel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. And Samziel, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cries went up to heaven. Genesis 5:24. And Enoch walked with Yahweh, and he was not, for Yahweh took him. Now, back to Leviticus 16, 8-9. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats. Okay, 2 goats. If you look the words up in Leviticus 16:8, those 2 goats mean devils. Okay, and 1 lot for Yahweh, and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell, and offer him for a sin offering. A sin offering for what? For what was taking place on the earth, because of the defilement of man and what they were doing. Hebrews 11:5. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God translated him. But before this translation he had the testimony that he pleased God. Enoch chapter 12 verse 1. Before these things Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him. And his activities had to do with the watchers. Where else do we see this word watchers? Well, it's in the book of Daniel. And the decree that's given to watchers is given to them by Yahweh, the heavenly council that Yahweh holds. And his days were with the holy ones. And Enoch was blessing the Lord of majesty and the King of the ages, and lo, watchers called me Enoch the scribe and said to me, Enoch, thou scribe of righteousness. Now, this scribe that's talked about right here, the scribe with the writer's inkhorn, is spoken about in Ezekiel chapter 9. This is the man with the writer's inkhorn. This is one of the two witnesses. How do we know that? Because it just told us Enoch walked with God and was not because God took him. Same thing happened with Elijah. So these two, for sure, without a doubt, are the two witnesses. Not to mention our Messiah transfigured on the same mount that these angels came down and made a pact on. Isn't that something? And then Yahweh comes out from heaven and says, this is my son, hear him. There's an entrance on that mountain. If you look up where that mountain is and the parallel of the mountain, it's exactly 33 degrees north by 33 degrees south. And it just also happens to parallel with some other major things that are on this planet. So I get tired of hearing people that have opinions on things that they've never looked into, that they've never studied. These aren't just coincidences. These are things that if you know what you're looking for, there's no way to get around these things. It's pretty straightforward what's being spoken about here. Enoch, the scribe of righteousness, go and declare to the watchers of the heaven who have left the high heaven and the holy eternal place and have defiled themselves with women and have done as the children of earth do and have taken unto themselves wives. You have wrought great destruction on the earth, and you shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin, insomuch as they delight in themselves in their children. The unaliving of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children shall they lament. They shall make supplication unto eternity, but mercy and peace shall you not attain. So this was what Enoch was told to tell these fallen who are now in flesh. They're in the flesh. They're not angels. They're not walking around glowing. None of that. They're fallen from their first estate. They're in the flesh because that's the form they took on. But when they defiled themselves, now they cannot return back into that angelic state and go back into or out of the realm, which is the firmament that we know. One of the firmaments, I should say. I'm not even going to go into that part because that'll throw everybody sideways. Enoch chapter 13. And Enoch went and said to Azazel, thou shalt have no peace, and service sentence has gone forth against thee to put thee into bonds, and thou shalt have no tolerance nor request granted to thee because of the unrighteousness which thou hast taught, and because of all the works of godlessness and unrighteousness and sin which thou hast shown to men. Then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were afraid, and fear and trembling seized them, and they besought me and to draw up a petition for them, that they might find forgiveness and read their petition in the presence of Yahweh of heaven. For from thenceforward they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes, to heaven for shame of their sins for which they had been condemned. Then I wrote out to the petition and the prayer in regard of the spirits and their deeds individually in regards to their requests, and that they should have forgiveness and length. And I went off and sat down by the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, in the south of the west of Hermon, and I read their petition till I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, and the vision fell down upon me, and I saw visions of chastisement, and a voice came to me bidding me, I to tell it to the sons of heaven and reprimand them. And when I awakened, I came to them, and they were all sitting gathered together and weeping by Abel's jail, which is between Lebanon and Senzer. When their faces were covered, and I recounted before them all the visions which I had seen in a sleep, I began to speak them the words of the righteousness and reprimand the heavenly watchers. So here we see Enoch was walking amongst men, and people knew who Enoch was because he had this testimony, but they also know that Enoch was taken. I'm going to jump off of here shortly. Maybe. We'll have to see if my son's a handful or not. And Enoch walked with Yahweh, and he was not, for Yahweh took him. Enoch chapter 15. And he answered and said to me, I heard his voice. Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice, and go and say to the watchers of heaven, You have sent thee to intercede for them. You should intercede for men, and not men for you. Wherefore have you left the high and holy eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? And you thought you were the holy spiritual, living the eternal life. You have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh. And as the children of men have lusted after flesh, and the blood also, as they do, who die and perish. Therefore I have given them wives also, that they might impregnate them, and begat children by them, that thus nothing might be wanting to them on the earth. So that's why Yahweh created women for men and men for women, so that we would not lust after anything on the earth. We would have a helpmeet. But these angels knew better. They thought they knew everything of heaven, though. That was their mistake. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, immortal, for all generations of the world, and therefore I have not appointed wives for you. For as the spiritual ones of heaven in is their dwelling. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have produced from their bodies, because they were born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on the earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of earth, which were born on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict and oppress and destroy and attack and do battle and work destruction on the earth and cause trouble. They take no food, nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. So I wonder where demons come from. I wonder when the Messiah was walking the earth, who he was casting demons out of and why. Where did these evil spirits come from? If Yahweh, like I've heard people say, is not allowing other entities to have free will, then where did evil spirits come from? Why do Christians say that demons flee from the name of Jesus? If demons don't exist, where did they come from? Why doesn't the Bible tell us this? It does. We just have to be able to find it. We have to be able to read it and understand what it says. Enoch chapter 16. From the days of the slaughter and destruction and death of the giants, from the souls of whose flesh the spirits have gone forth, shall destroy with an incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of their consummation. The great judgment, which is in the age, shall be consummated over the watchers and the godless. Yea, shall the holy be consummated. And now, as to the watchers who have sent thee to intercede for them, and had aforetime in heaven, say to them, You have been in heaven, and all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you, worthless ones, are in the hardness of your hearts you have made known to the women, and through these mysteries women and men work much evil on the earth. Say to them, therefore, you have no peace. So again, guys, I just wanted to make this abundantly clear. I'm only scratching the surface here. I haven't even begun to get into bloodlines, to get in more depth. So I will have some time here shortly. I'm going to hop off for a couple minutes, and then I'll probably jump back on within about 20 minutes, because I want to pick back up where I left off here. But listen and understand what I'm saying. These fallen watchers were on the earth. There are books that outdate the 66 book canon that we have. This is why when I speak with Jason and him and I start talking about the book of Enoch, this is why we say we will take the book of Enoch any day.